The television courtroom had never witnessed such a chilling combination of entitlement, manipulation, and veiled threats all wrapped in a designer dress and a victim narrative. Amanda Preston, a 38-year-old single mother who somehow managed to live in a $2.3 million mansion while claiming she couldn't afford to pay an $8,500 catering bill, sat in Judge Judy's courtroom with the kind of cold confidence that only comes from years of successfully manipulating powerful men into fighting her battles. Her Gucci dress, worth $3,200, moved perfectly as she shifted in her seat. The Christian Louboutin heels on her feet carried a $1,400 price tag. The custom diamond-encrusted iPhone case she kept checking cost more than $5,000 on its own. Everything about her screamed wealth and privilege, yet she was being sued by Jennifer Hayes, a 52-year-old small business owner whose family catering company had provided premium services for Amanda's daughter's extravagant birthday party 7 months ago. Services that Amanda had simply refused to pay for, as if writing checks to working-class people was somehow beneath someone of her manufactured status. But when Judge Judy pressed Amanda about why she believed she could ignore a legitimate debt to a hardworking business owner who employed 8 people and had never been stiffed in 28 years of operation, Amanda made a decision that would cost her absolutely everything. She leaned back in her chair with a smirk that could freeze water, pulled out that expensive iPhone like it was a weapon of mass destruction, waved it directly at Judge Judy Scanlon with the kind of arrogance that comes from never facing real consequences, and delivered 6 words that would turn her into the most despised woman on the internet and destroy every aspect of her carefully constructed fake life. I can end this with one call. Those 6 words, dripping with entitlement and empty threats, would be shared 142 million times across every social media platform, trending worldwide for 9 consecutive days, and used as the ultimate example of what happens when borrowed power meets real authority. What Amanda didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have understood in her bubble of delusion and manipulation, was that Judge Judy had spent the previous night digging into exactly who Amanda thought she could call, what kind of life she had actually been living, and how many people she had destroyed along the way to her luxury lifestyle that she didn't even own. What Amanda didn't realize was that her entire house of cards, meticulously built on manipulating wealthy divorced men, threatening small business owners with fake legal letters, and using her daughter as a prop to gain sympathy while denying that child a relationship with her father, was about to collapse on national television in the most spectacular and devastating way possible. What happened next wasn't just a legal ruling where someone wins a case and someone loses. This was an exposure so complete, so methodical, so absolutely brutal that it would cost Amanda her mansion, her luxury car, her designer wardrobe, her custody arrangement with her daughter, her freedom from criminal prosecution, and her ability to ever show her face in public again without being recognized as the woman who threatened Judge Judy and learned exactly why that was the worst decision of her entire life. Before we show you the exact moment Amanda Preston's confident smirk turned into sheer panic as she realized Judge Judy knew everything about her pattern of fraud spanning 3 relationships and 27 victims, before we reveal how that expensive phone she waved around wasn't even registered in her name, you need to smash that like button right now because you're about to witness a woman who weaponized single motherhood while living like a millionaire on other people's money completely destroyed by America's toughest judge. Hit subscribe because what Judge Judy reveals about this professional manipulator's criminal pattern, her fake attorney letters, her serial relationship fraud, and her use of her own daughter as a manipulation tool will shock you to your absolute core. And if you believe that threatening judges with mysterious phone calls while wearing $50,000 worth of jewelry you didn't pay for represents the ultimate form of delusional entitlement, comment one call below and let me know you're ready to see karma deliver the most satisfying justice in courtroom television history. Trust me when I say the next 20 minutes will restore your faith that no amount of fake connections, no amount of borrowed power, and no amount of manufactured victim status can save you when you face a judge who has spent 25 years in family court dealing with manipulators, liars, and frauds who thought they were smarter than the system. Here's a question that millions of hardworking Americans who play by the rules and pay their bills ask themselves every single day. When did some people start believing that being attractive and claiming victim status gives them the right to cheat honest business owners out of money they earned? When did threatening people with vague connections to powerful men become an acceptable way to avoid paying legitimate debts? When did waving an expensive phone become a substitute for actually having real power or real resources? Because what happened to Amanda Preston proves that Judge Judy remembers something that entitled frauds always forget. In a courtroom, the only power that matters is truth, evidence, and whether you treated people with basic human decency. Thursday afternoon, 2:30 sharp, Studio 4A. The case being called was Jennifer Hayes versus Amanda Preston, $8,500 in unpaid catering services plus damages for emotional distress and business harm. What should have been a straightforward breach of contract case, the kind that gets resolved in 15 minutes with basic evidence and testimony, was about to become a deep investigation into fraud, manipulation, and a lifestyle built entirely on lies and other people's money. The bailiff's voice cut through the murmur of the assembled audience as he announced the parties, and the contrast between the two women entering that courtroom couldn't have been more stark or more representative of everything this case would expose. Amanda Preston entered first, and she didn't just walk into the courtroom like a normal defendant preparing to defend herself against legitimate accusations. She made an entrance like she was arriving at a charity gala where photographers should be waiting to capture her importance for the society pages. Her perfectly highlighted blonde hair, fresh from a salon appointment that probably cost $300, bounced with each confident step. Her designer sunglasses, Chanel frames worth $650, sat perched on top of her head like a crown even though she was indoors in a courtroom. She carried that diamond-encrusted iPhone like it was a status symbol, checking it twice before even sitting down, completely ignoring the bailiff's instruction to silence all devices. Her entire demeanor screamed that she viewed this proceeding as an inconvenience, an annoyance that she would quickly dispense with before returning to her real life of luxury brunches and shopping trips funded by men she wasn't married to. Jennifer Hayes entered the courtroom like a woman carrying the weight of 7 months of stress, sleepless nights, and financial worry that had nearly destroyed her family business. She was 52 years old, wearing a modest business suit from a department store, the kind of practical outfit that working people wear when they need to look presentable but can't afford designer labels that cost more than a month's rent. In her hand she clutched a 3-ring binder stuffed with contracts, emails, text messages, photographs, and documentation that represented her desperate attempt to get justice against someone who had the resources to make problems disappear with threats and manipulation. Her hands trembled slightly as she took her position at the plaintiff's table, not from fear of the legal process itself, but from the accumulated stress of fighting for what she was owed while watching her business suffer because one entitled woman decided that paying bills was optional. The dark circles under Jennifer's eyes told the story of someone who had been working double shifts to make up for the revenue loss, someone who had nearly been forced to lay off employees who depended on their paychecks, someone who had questioned whether fighting back was worth it when Amanda had resources and connections that seemed infinite. Judge Judy reviewed the case file with the methodical attention of someone who had presided over 20,000 cases and developed an almost supernatural ability to spot patterns of fraud and manipulation within the first 30 seconds of hearing testimony. Her experienced eye had already caught several inconsistencies in Amanda's initial paperwork, small lies that pointed to much bigger deceptions underneath the surface. Judge Judy opened the proceedings with her signature no-nonsense approach, her voice cutting through the courtroom air with surgical precision. Miss Preston, you're being sued for $8,500 in unpaid catering services for your daughter's birthday party. Why haven't you paid this bill? Amanda's response was immediate and practiced, delivered with the kind of rehearsed confidence that comes from years of talking her way out of consequences. Your Honor, there were significant quality issues with the service provided. The food wasn't prepared to the standards I was promised. The presentation was subpar. And frankly, I felt I was being overcharged for what was actually delivered. She said it all without looking at Jennifer, without acknowledging the woman she was accusing of incompetence, treating her like she was invisible or beneath acknowledgement. Judge Judy leaned forward slightly, her radar already pinging on the dismissive tone and vague accusations. Do you have any photographs or documentation of these quality issues you're describing? Any evidence that the food wasn't prepared properly or that the service was subpar? Amanda waved her hand in a gesture of casual dismissal that made several audience members exchange glances of disbelief. I was hosting a party for my daughter, Your Honor. I wasn't walking around with a camera documenting problems. I was trying to manage the situation and make sure my daughter's special day wasn't completely ruined by incompetent service. The word incompetent hung in the air like an insult, and Jennifer's hands tightened on her binder as she fought to control her emotional response to being called incompetent by someone who hadn't paid for services rendered 7 months ago. Judge Judy's eyebrows raised slightly, that first warning sign that experienced viewers knew meant trouble was building beneath the surface. So you're asking this court to believe your claims about poor quality without any evidence whatsoever? No photos, no witness statements, no documentation of any kind? Amanda shifted in her seat with an exaggerated sigh that the microphones picked up clearly, a sound that communicated her belief that she was dealing with someone who simply didn't understand how the world worked. Your Honor, I'm a single mother trying to give my daughter a nice birthday party. I shouldn't have to provide forensic evidence and witness testimony just to dispute being overcharged by someone who didn't deliver what they promised. The single mother card, played early and obviously, as if having a child gave her the right to cheat people and avoid paying legitimate debts. Judge Judy noticed something else, something that would become central to unraveling Amanda's entire deception. The outfit Amanda was wearing, the accessories she carried, the jewelry visible on her wrists and fingers, all of it combined was worth more than the disputed $8,500 bill she claimed she couldn't afford to pay. A woman who couldn't pay for catering services shouldn't be wearing a $3,200 designer dress and carrying a phone with a $5,000 custom case. Judge Judy turned her attention to Jennifer Hayes, her tone softening slightly in the way it always did when addressing people who had clearly been wronged by entitled manipulators. Miss Hayes, tell me about this event and what actually happened. Jennifer took a deep breath, steadying herself before speaking, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had been dismissed and disrespected for 7 months but was finally getting a chance to tell her truth. Your Honor, Miss Preston contacted me 3 months before her daughter's 7th birthday party. She found my company through our website and called specifically because she'd seen photos of elaborate events we'd catered. She told me she wanted a luxury princess-themed party for 50 children and 30 adults. She showed me pictures from Pinterest of setups that would cost thousands of dollars and told me explicitly that money was no object, that she wanted the absolute best for her daughter Sophia because, in her words, this little girl deserves everything. Jennifer opened her binder and pulled out the signed contract, walking it up to Judge Judy's bench. We drafted a comprehensive contract specifying everything. Custom gourmet menu with both child-friendly options and sophisticated adult entrees. An elaborate dessert bar with a custom 3-tier cake that alone cost $800. Full-service setup and breakdown with our staff handling every detail. Coordination of all rental equipment including tables, chairs, linens, and serving pieces. A team of 6 servers working the 4-hour event from setup through cleanup. The total agreed price was $8,500, itemized in the contract that Miss Preston signed without any questions or negotiations. The contract required a 50% deposit of $4,250 before we would begin work. Amanda wrote a check for the deposit that initially bounced, creating our first red flag. Jennifer's voice tightened with the memory. When I called her about the bounced check, she acted like I was being unreasonable for even mentioning it. She claimed it was a bank error and wrote a second check, which cleared after I told her I would cancel the entire event if payment didn't go through immediately. That should have been my warning to walk away, but I believed in giving people the benefit of the doubt, and she seemed so sincere about wanting this special day for her daughter. The party was scheduled for a Saturday in March. My team arrived at 11 in the morning to set up for the 1 p.m. start time, working in the backyard of the home Miss Preston was living in, a massive estate with a pool and landscaped gardens. We spent 2 hours creating exactly what she had requested, photographing everything as we went because Miss Preston had been so particular during the planning process about wanting everything perfect. Every detail matched the contract specifications. Hot foods were maintained at proper temperature in our professional warming equipment. Cold items were kept on ice in our display arrangements. The dessert bar looked like something from a magazine spread. Everything was absolutely perfect. Judge Judy examined the photographs Jennifer had provided, time-stamped images showing an elaborate setup that clearly met professional catering standards, and more importantly, showing Amanda herself smiling and posing next to the dessert table, giving thumbs up to the camera with obvious satisfaction. The party itself was a tremendous success, Jennifer continued, her confidence building as she laid out the evidence. Parents complimented the food throughout the entire event. Children ate enthusiastically, coming back for seconds and thirds. Miss Preston herself thanked me multiple times during the party, telling me I had exceeded her expectations and that everything was absolutely perfect. We have photographs of her hugging me and posing with different elements of the setup. The party lasted until 5 in the evening with no complaints, no problems, no issues whatsoever. At the end of the event, as specified in our contract, Miss Preston signed a satisfaction form stating that all services had been delivered as promised and that everything was perfect and exceeded expectations. Jennifer handed Judge Judy the satisfaction form with Amanda's signature clearly visible at the bottom. The final payment of $4,250 was due within 7 days per the contract terms. For 2 weeks, Miss Preston didn't respond to any of my calls, emails, or text messages. I sent polite reminders about the payment deadline. Nothing. No response whatsoever. Then, 2 weeks after the party, I received a text message from her that said, and I quote, "The food was cold and terrible and I'm not paying for substandard service." Judge Judy looked up sharply from the documents. She waited 2 weeks and then suddenly claimed the food was cold. After signing a form saying everything was perfect. After posing for photos with your dessert display. Jennifer nodded emphatically. I immediately responded with copies of all the photographs from the event, the signed satisfaction form, and statements from 3 of her guests who had contacted me afterward to book their own events because they'd been so impressed with our work. Miss Preston's response was to block my phone number completely. I sent the invoice by certified mail to ensure she received it. She sent back a letter on legal letterhead from someone claiming to be her attorney, Robert Mathers, threatening to sue me for harassment and defamation if I continued trying to collect payment for services she claimed were inadequate. Judge Judy's expression hardened into something dangerous. "This attorney Robert Mathers, do you have that letter?" Jennifer produced it immediately, and Judge Judy examined it with the trained eye of someone who had seen countless fake legal documents over her decades on the bench. "Miss Preston, who is Robert Mathers?" Amanda shifted uncomfortably in her seat, apparently not expecting this line of questioning. "He's my attorney, Your Honor. He handles my legal matters." Judge Judy's voice took on that edge that regular viewers knew meant someone was about to be exposed. "What's his bar license number?" Amanda's pause was telling, her confidence cracking slightly around the edges. "I don't have that information with me right now." "Where is his office located?" Amanda's answer came slowly. "I'm not sure of the exact address." Judge Judy leaned back in her chair with that slight smile that meant she had caught someone in a lie and was about to make them regret it. "Miss Preston, there is no attorney named Robert Mathers licensed to practice law in this state. This letter was printed on generic letterhead you can buy at any office supply store, and it contains multiple spelling errors and legal mistakes that no actual attorney would make. So let me ask you again, who wrote this threatening letter to Miss Hayes?" The silence that followed Judge Judy's question was electric with tension, every person in the courtroom leaning forward slightly as Amanda's carefully constructed facade began showing visible cracks. Before Amanda could formulate another lie, Judge Judy gestured to the gallery with a sweep of her hand. "Miss Hayes, I see you brought several witnesses with you today. Who are these people and why are they here?" Jennifer stood, her voice gaining strength as she realized Judge Judy was taking this seriously in ways she had desperately hoped but barely dared believe. "Your Honor, these are other business owners who have had the exact same experience with Miss Preston. The same pattern of hiring services, receiving excellent work, signing satisfaction agreements, and then refusing to pay while sending threatening letters from this same fake attorney." Judge Judy's expression transformed into something that made Amanda visibly shrink in her chair. "Step forward and identify yourselves." The first witness was a woman in her mid-40s, professionally dressed but clearly nervous about speaking in such a public forum. "My name is Sarah Chen, Your Honor. I'm a professional photographer. 2 years ago, Miss Preston hired me to photograph her daughter's 5th birthday party, take some portraits of her for what she said was her business website, and shoot photos she wanted for her dating profiles. The total cost was $3,200. I delivered over 500 edited, professional quality photographs. Miss Preston loved them so much she immediately posted dozens on her social media accounts after removing my watermark, which violated our contract. When I sent her the invoice, suddenly the photos were unusable and poorly lit, despite the fact that she had been using them publicly for weeks. I sent her a cease and desist letter about the copyright violation. She responded with a letter from Robert Mathers threatening to sue me for harassment. I eventually wrote off the loss because I couldn't afford to pursue legal action against someone who seemed to have unlimited resources for attorneys. Sarah's voice cracked slightly. That $3,000 represented a month of income for my small business. I nearly had to close because of that loss. The second witness stepped forward, a Latina woman in her late 30s with the exhausted look of someone who had been fighting for justice for too long. I'm Michelle Rodriguez, Your Honor. I run a party planning business. Miss Preston hired me to coordinate her daughter's 5th birthday party, the same event Miss Chen photographed. My services included vendor coordination, timeline management, setup supervision, and day of execution. The contract was for $6,800. Everything went flawlessly. She posted photos on social media tagging my business and praising my work with comments about how I made her vision come to life perfectly. 2 weeks later, she sent a message claiming there were too many mistakes and she wasn't paying. I showed her screenshots of her own social media posts praising me. She blocked me on every platform. I received the same threatening letter from Robert Mathers. That loss nearly bankrupted my startup business. I had to take out a personal loan to cover my expenses because I'd already paid my vendors and staff based on expecting her payment. The third witness was an older man, weathered and clearly uncomfortable in the formal courtroom setting but determined to have his story heard. My name is David Torres, Your Honor. I own a landscaping company. Miss Preston hired us to completely redesign the backyard of the house she was living in. She said she needed it done immediately because she was hosting a garden party. The job cost $12,000. We worked overtime, finished in 2 weeks instead of the normal 4. She walked the property with me when we completed the work, told me it was absolutely perfect and exactly what she wanted. I have her text messages saying it exceeded her expectations. Her check bounced. When I called her, she said her boyfriend would take care of it. Never happened. I filed in small claims court and won a judgment 3 years ago. She never paid a single dollar. I tried to garnish her wages and discovered she has no reported income. I tried to place a lien and discovered she owns no property. Everything is in other people's names. That judgment is still unpaid. I lost $12,000 and had to lay off one of my workers because of the financial hit. Judge Judy's face had transformed into an expression of barely controlled fury as she opened a thick file folder that had been sitting on her bench throughout the proceedings. Miss Preston, let's talk about your lifestyle and how you managed to afford it while apparently having no income, no assets, and a trail of unpaid debt stretching back years. Amanda's voice took on a defensive edge that made her sound like a cornered animal. Your Honor, I don't see how my personal finances are relevant to this dispute about catering services. Judge Judy's response was swift and cutting. It's extremely relevant when you're claiming you couldn't afford to pay $8,500 while sitting in my courtroom wearing a $3,200 dress, $1,400 shoes, and carrying a phone with a custom case that costs $5,000. It's relevant when multiple witnesses are testifying to an identical pattern of fraud. And it's especially relevant when my research team has uncovered exactly how you've been living for the past 7 years. Judge Judy began reading from the file with the methodical precision of a prosecutor laying out a criminal case. Amanda Preston, you have filed 0 income tax returns for the past 5 years. No W-2 forms, number 1099 forms, no business income reported to the IRS despite claiming to be an entrepreneur and consultant. You have no registered business entity in this state or any other. The $2.3 million home you live in is mortgaged in the name of Richard Whitmore, your current boyfriend. The Range Rover you drive is leased in Richard Whitmore's name. Your credit cards are all authorized user accounts on other people's cards. Your daughter's $35,000 per year private school tuition is being paid by Marcus Ashford, your previous boyfriend from 2 years ago. Your health insurance is still on the family plan of Thomas Chen, the boyfriend you had before Marcus. You don't own a single asset. You have no legitimate income. Everything in your life is provided by men you're dating or have dated. Judge Judy looked up from the file with an expression of contempt that made the temperature in the courtroom drop 10 degrees. So let me ask you directly, Miss Preston. How exactly do you support yourself and your daughter? Amanda stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor, her composure finally shattering completely under the weight of the exposure. Your Honor, you don't understand how the world works. I'm a single mother doing the best I can. Richard helped support me while I build my business, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's what people in relationships do. Judge Judy's voice cut through Amanda's rising hysteria like a blade. Sit down, Miss Preston. Sit down right now. But Amanda was too far gone, too panicked by the realization that Judge Judy knew everything, had investigated everything, and was systematically dismantling the lies she had built her entire life around. She pulled out her iPhone, holding it up like it was a talisman that could protect her from consequences. You know what? You want to threaten me? Fine. I can end this with one call. One call and your little TV show will have problems you can't even imagine. The courtroom didn't just go silent. It entered some kind of alternate dimension where even breathing seemed too loud, where every single person sat frozen in absolute disbelief at what they had just witnessed. Amanda Preston, still standing, still holding that diamond-encrusted iPhone up like a weapon, had just threatened Judge Judy Scanlon on national television, and the look on Judge Judy's face as she slowly rose from her chair was something that would be replayed millions of times across every social media platform for years to come. Judge Judy stood, which she almost never did during proceedings, and when Judge Judy stood, everyone who had ever watched her show knew that something had transcended normal courtroom boundaries and entered the realm of complete and total annihilation. Put the phone down, Miss Preston. Put it down right now. Her voice was deadly calm, the kind of calm that precedes a Category 5 hurricane making landfall. But Amanda, already too far gone in her panic and desperation, couldn't stop herself from continuing to dig the hole deeper. I'm just saying, Your Honor, there are people who won't appreciate how I'm being treated here. Important people. Powerful people. One phone call and this situation goes away. One call to the right person and everything changes. Judge Judy's slight smile was absolutely terrifying to anyone who recognized what it meant. One call to whom, Miss Preston? Tell me exactly who you think you're going to call. Amanda hesitated, finally beginning to realize she had made a catastrophic mistake but too proud and too desperate to back down. I don't have to tell you that. That's private. Judge Judy's response was surgical in its precision. Is it Richard Whitmore you're planning to call? The man whose house you live in? The man whose car you drive? The man who has absolutely no idea you're being sued right now because you haven't told him about any of this? Amanda's face went pale, the color draining so fast it was visible even under her expensive makeup. How did you, she started, but Judge Judy cut her off without mercy. Or perhaps you were going to call Marcus Ashford, the previous boyfriend who's still paying your daughter's private school tuition because you told him you were temporarily between jobs. Except that was 3 years ago and you're still not employed. Or maybe Thomas Chen, the hedge fund manager who still has you on his health insurance because you claimed you had a pre-existing condition and couldn't get coverage anywhere else. All 3 men, Miss Preston, and not one of them knows the full truth about what you've been doing, who you've been scamming, or how many people you've left with unpaid bills while living in luxury on their money. Judge Judy opened her file folder and began reading with the voice of someone who had been waiting years for exactly this moment, the opportunity to expose a predator so completely that they could never hunt again. My research team has been extraordinarily thorough, Miss Preston, and here's what we discovered about your pattern of behavior over the past 7 years. You target wealthy divorced men, typically 15 to 20 years older than you, men who are successful but lonely and susceptible to a beautiful woman who claims to need their help and protection. You move in with them within 3 to 6 months of meeting them, always with your daughter in tow to create the image of an instant family. You convince them to put the house and car in their names for supposed tax purposes. You get added as an authorized user on their credit cards. You claim you're building a business and just need a little time to get established, so you contribute nothing financially while spending thousands of dollars per month on personal luxuries. And then you run up massive bills with local vendors, always promising that your boyfriend will pay, always saying money is no object. When the vendors come looking for payment, you suddenly discover quality issues that didn't exist. You refuse to pay. You send threatening letters from your fake attorney Robert Mathers. And when the vendors give up because they can't afford to fight you legally, you move on to the next victim. When each relationship eventually ends after 18 to 24 months because these men finally realize they're being used, you simply move directly to the next wealthy target, leaving the previous boyfriend stuck with mortgages, car leases, and unpaid vendor bills. The gallery was completely silent except for the sound of Judge Judy turning pages in her file, each document another nail in the coffin of Amanda's fake life. Thomas Chen, 2018 to 2020. You lived in his home, drove his car, spent his money. You accumulated $67,000 in unpaid vendor bills over those 2 years, telling everyone Thomas would pay. When vendors contacted Thomas, he discovered you'd been cheating on him with Marcus Ashford. He ended the relationship but you manipulated him into keeping you on his health insurance by claiming medical necessity. Marcus Ashford, 2020 to 2022. Same exact pattern. You moved from Thomas's house directly into Marcus's mansion. He paid for everything while you promised to contribute once your business launched. A business that never existed. You racked up $83,000 in unpaid vendor bills, and when they started suing, some of them named Marcus in the lawsuits because you'd implied he had authorized the purchases. He broke up with you when he discovered the fraud, but you manipulated him into continuing to pay your daughter's private school tuition by claiming it was for Sophia's stability. He's still paying $35,000 per year 3 years later. Richard Whitmore, 2022 to present. You met him 1 week after Marcus ended your relationship. 1 week. You moved into his $2.3 million home within 2 months. Same promises about your business, same pattern of spending his money, same accumulation of unpaid vendor bills that now total $94,000 and counting. Richard has no idea you're being sued. He doesn't know about the unpaid bills. He thinks you're a successful entrepreneur going through a temporary reorganization. You're spending $8,000 to $12,000 per month of his money on personal luxury items while claiming to be building a business. Judge Judy's voice rose with righteous fury as she delivered her final devastating blow. 27 small business owners, Miss Preston. $263,000 in unpaid bills over 7 years. 3 wealthy men defrauded. A daughter weaponized as a prop to gain sympathy. A father denied custody through your manipulation and lies. Fake attorney letters sent to intimidate people. And now, threatening a judge in her courtroom because you thought waving an expensive phone that doesn't even belong to you would somehow save you from consequences. Here's my ruling, and I want you to listen very carefully because your life is about to change forever. Jennifer Hayes is awarded $8,500 in unpaid services, plus $3,000 in interest and late fees, plus $5,000 in emotional distress, plus $2,500 in legal costs. Total judgment $19,000, due immediately. Furthermore, I am referring this case to the district attorney for criminal investigation into fraud and impersonating an attorney. I am sending my complete file to Richard Whitmore so he knows exactly who's living in his house. I am notifying Marcus and Thomas so they can pursue civil remedies. I am forwarding everything to your daughter's father to support his custody case. And I am releasing my findings to every business you've defrauded and to the media because the public has a right to know about serial fraudsters. Get out of my courtroom, Miss Preston. Your one phone call just cost you everything.